it should be given that people won't commit serious sexual offences. So, understandably, that has caused significant political consternation.
Shabana Mahmood made these comments. I can't tell you the story of the pamphlet telling asylum seekers that rape is illegal in this country has really wound people up. You could make the case, as Jenny Kleeman did, that it's kind of covering, it's just merely saying to people, this is basically the setup in this country, here it is. It acts as a sort of forewarning but does nothing more. The other argument is it reveals a truth at the heart of the government that it can't deal with, which is large numbers of people are coming to this country and they're worried about them having different cultural values to an extreme extent.
You would have thought that not raping people is a universal cultural value wherever you're from, and I think that is why people are really angry about it. The leaflet appears to be very tone-deaf. It should be given that people won't commit serious sexual offences. So, understandably, that has caused significant political consternation, including within Labour ranks. It is quite a surprising and shocking leaflet to read. But then, obviously, there are some migrants who have committed very serious offences across the scale. So, I think you can see. The Home Office argument would be that there was, a need for that, but equally, it seems utterly bizarre when you look at it in the cold light of day.
It also is a difficulty for Shabana Mahmood, it strikes me, because people want to see a policy by which only justifiable migrants come here. And what Shabana Mahmood is saying at the same time as these leaflets exist is, we need to spread the concentration of asylum seekers around the country. It concedes the point, doesn't it? It implies we can't stop them, we can't get a reasonable number, so much that we have to spread them around the country on the one hand and tell them not to rape people on the other. And that's a very difficult political message to send out.
Yeah, it's effectively about diluting the impact on local communities, but a lot lies in the definition of fairness. So she says she wants asylum accommodation to be dispersed in a fair way, i.e. not all concentrated on deprived areas. But at the same time, some of the government's plans, locals would say are unfair. They are huge sites with more than 1,000 male asylum seekers potentially near small villages. So is fairness, deprived affluent areas taking an equal share, or is fairness, not having giant kind of former MOD sites next to small areas where people live that dwarf the local populations? And fairness is a subjective measure. So we'll see what happens with these MOD sites, but they are hugely contentious, and I can only see that growing as we get them. And we've had Labour MPs raising concerns about those sites who are near the constituencies about the impact on local NHS, local services. We've had the police raising concerns about having so many people on one site. So what is fair is the broader debate here.
At one point, the name Sue Gray haunted my sleeping hours because it was constantly on our lips. We never stopped talking about it to do with Boris Johnson, then again with Keir Starmer. I never spoke to her. She was never interviewed by any of us. I don't think. Yeah, I'm sure you know her very well, Steve. She's now broken cover a little bit and talked to someone.
She was, as a figure, she was genuinely not someone that was spoke to journalists very much. I think I bumped into her once at a Labour conference where it was one of those kind of big karaoke receptions that they have at Labour conferences, and she was wearing a leather jacket, her trademark leather jacket, in the middle of the floor. I said hello, but obviously she didn't say much. So this is genuinely one of the first times we properly heard from Sue Gray, which is where the interest is. And it's interesting in two ways. It's interesting for historians. She says, look, it wasn't all my fault. It was, look at the principle, basically. Look at Keir Starmer. That's where leadership has to start. And the things went wrong because of him, effectively. Although it's much more coded, her language, than that. Yeah. But that's the gist of it. And then she talks about where we are with Andy Burnham today, saying he appears to articulate a kind of clear vision of what he wants and where he wants to go. So there is, it doesn't take a lot to infer from that. She is saying Andy Burnham seems to have a plan and Keir Starmer didn't. That's blunt, but that is the kind of general message. But also what you get is an insight into what it was like in Number 10 during that period, because she was one of the most briefed against people in the Starmer regime. They came all the time, and she said it was unbearable. She said that I got in really early to avoid the cameras and left really late. And just you get a kind of feeling of the sense of isolation she felt, that at once she was one of the most powerful people in the country, and on the other end, she was the subject of a very vitriolic briefing campaign about her competence and ability.
Andy Burnham talking about litter today, following on from buses and rough sleepers. Is there a danger he looks like a cosplaying mayor, not a prime minister? That the sort of issues a mayor would be very good at, he's very good at. He's very good at doing videos as well. But as we see from the early release programme, as we're going to see from the migrant issue, as is going to happen with social care, with military spending, there are prime ministerial issues that take an awful lot to deal with. And will he be as comfortable with them as he is on the universally recognised value of picking up litter?
Well, we are soon going to be finding out in a few weeks. Parliament's back, and there are so many big issues on the table. There is an argument that these are the kind of things that he campaigned on in the by-election. He obviously holds great store by them. He likes getting out and about. But this is the prelude to much bigger things and bigger decisions to come. So it's probably too early to judge. They would argue that obviously litter is a universal issue. People are very concerned about, and waste crime more broadly. During the Makerfield by-election, one of the central issues was a huge toxic waste dump on the edge of the constituency. And he put a lot of political stock actually in getting rid of that, or starting to get rid of that. So this all comes from those Makerfield values as he sees them. But you're right, there are national issues at play, and he's going to have to get to grips with them. And that process starts when Parliament returns with a bang.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's banking some wins as well. And look, people care about litter. We only have to mention it on this programme, and people feel very strongly about it. So I do take that point. Steve, great to speak to you.
Thank you.
That's Steve Swinford, the Times political editor. So Shabana Mahmood is doubling down on Andy Burnham on this. And I guess the risk to them is that this implies that the problem of small boat migrants, asylum seekers are coming en masse is not going to be solved in the short term, and therefore the real solution is where to house them, rather than to work out, are we accepting the right number in the first place?
Absolutely. And I remember when it was the Conservative government trying to grapple with the small boats crisis, I remember having quite a few conversations with Labour MPs at the time who were pretty mocking in the Conservative effort, and just said, look, you know, it's all about speeding up approvals. It's all about speeding up how quickly they're processed. And this, once again, is an illustration that it is much easier to criticise and offer solutions from the sidelines than actually do it in government. And I think, you know, it is a change in messaging. You also, at the same time, I think it's important to point out that Shabana Mahmood, in her interview, is pointing out a figure of more than 80,000 asylum seekers have been deported over the past two years. That's a rise in deportations. But look at the small print again, only 6,000 of those came in small boats. So you're sort of seeing a shift away from just saying we're going to fix the boats crisis, stop the gangs, etc., that Keir Starmer focused on, and now discussing, like Andy Burnham has, the question of where they should be instead, where they should be in communities.
And something follows from that is how they should behave while they are here. And I think the problem of people coming and concentrating men from countries where the culture is very different is crystallised by this Home Office guidance, these pamphlets we've been talking about this morning, which effectively say, if you come to this country, please don't rape women, please don't abuse them, please don't catcall them, please recognise that women in British society have an equal import to men. The fact that you have to put that in writing, the fact that that has to be guidance from the Home Office, in many ways illustrates the problem many people have with the notion of a concentration of asylum seekers in any given area.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, just to clarify to listeners, because I know, you know, sometimes people listen to journalists and slightly tune out or think that things have been slightly accentuated. But I'm looking at the document in front of me, and the absolute first thing that it talks about is pointing out that women can work and earn their own money. And it's just grim, to be honest. It's having to labour the point that if you're a man, you're not allowed to, even if it's your family member, you're not allowed to control how they work and live, and who they can be in a relationship, and whether or not they have to give consent. You know, it's so yes. I mean, this document, which was put out by the Home Office yesterday, it is already seeing a very strong political backlash. You've had the Conservatives and Reform heavily criticise it, and I think the timing, combined with this messaging about housing asylum seekers in more communities, in not just one type, not just poorer communities, as Shabana Mahmood is saying, it's certainly going to rile people. It's only going to get even more attention.
Yeah. Well, we're going to speak to Georgia Gould, who's the minister today. We'll speak to her at 8:30. We'll see what she says about that as well. It's a very good point, and I think it's wound up quite a lot of our listeners this morning as well. Thank you so much. That's Anna Mihalova, our political editor there.